for the last week and the week before that about the Redeemer of Israel, and each time we have gone a step closer and closer toward the end. But as I told you, I have many reasons why I enjoyed these classes. One of them is that I don't feel a need that I have to finish now or finish this, and therefore, we do go on. And I said, okay, we'll finish it next week. And in fact, what I had prepared now is that if if indeed we finish, before I thought we would be finishing, I have the next class already to start, and I have the source sheets for that also, so you don't have to worry about it. Okay. Um, when we last left Moshe, Moshe Rabbeinu, we had gone through uh, really the remarkable um, impact of the women on and the upbringing and the I guess the personality molding of Moshe Rabbeinu. And we pointed out both the Chizkuni and the Ibn Ezra, the approach of even the name of Moshe. It is questionable who was it. It would seem from the text itself that Vatikra, that it was um, Bat Paro who called him. And indeed, it says, Ki min hamayim mishitihu. I'm calling him Moshe, for I have drawn him out of the water. And that was not Yocheved, that was not his biological mother who did that, but rather Bat Paro. And we went through as I said, the Chizkuni, and we went through that of the Ibn Ezra as to whether it really had its source of name of Moshe as an Egyptian name. I even pointed out that what is claimed by, I think, the Ibn Ezra, it really more was not an Egyptian name, but actually it was probably a Greek form of the Egyptian name. Either way, that would make sense. And Moshe, though we said Mishitiu, because it's a root form of the Hebrew word, Mishol, to pull out, to take out, and to draw him out. How would she know Hebrew? Someone said she learned it from the mother, though the mother herself was telling her, why not call him the Hebrew name of Moshe? That's what it means. But more likely, most would say it was indeed originally a Egyptian name, which was Hebraicized. Um, all the people who were Cohen when they were in Europe, they became Kogim and they came here. So the, the name was Hebraicized as Moshe. The point that I'm making here is the very fact that the Torah leaves it somewhat, vague as to precisely who called him Moshe, that we can have the Mefarshim saying, well, it could be this, it could be that, not sure. I think it points to the idea that, you know what? They both did. These two women really were both the mothers of Moshe Rabbeinu, and in effect, therefore, they were the impact of his upbringing. Both houses, both did it. But we haven't touched upon yet is the experiences and the story of Moshe in Midyan when he escapes from Egypt, and we'll touch upon that too. But before that, I just want to get through with some of the important events that we can see, and most of us already realized the events that the Torah indicates that we clearly know were a reflection of the type of individual that Moshe was, even when he just had grown up, Vayigdal, when he began to grow up. So we but I suppose can separate the three basic stories that the text allows us to know about. Uh, the first thing that we have, let's see if this is in the sources. I think it is. I will tell you exactly as soon as I find it. Here it is. Okay. The first thing, right, in source number 7, story A that we're going to, that we all know, that we'll see what the impact. There you see Vayihi Bayamim Hahem. In those days, it's an interesting thing. It's a beginning of seemingly a different era or a different time. The first part, 10 psukim, we have Moshe basically being an infant and being brought to the palace and being brought up. As far as we know, he was 2 or 3. He was weaned. Nothing else. So the text tells us, Vayihi, the Torah lets us know, Vayihi Bayamim Hahem was during these days, meaning there was a passage of time in which it says, Vayigdal Moshe. He grew up. Hello. You know, kids, they grow up too fast. Anyway, Moshe grows up. And that means he becomes more independent. And that's what it says, Vayetze el Echav. And we see, as you see in the English, some time after that, when Moses had grown up, he went out to his brethren. He went out to his brethren, which already tells us he knew who his brethren were, right? He didn't say, "Oh, my brethren was my cousin, who's the prince of Hoopy Doopy, and this was my aunt, who's the prince of his brethren." He seemed to know that he was an Israelite, right? And he witnessed their labors. Now, I'm going to touch on this, which I'll probably do later. In Hebrew, the idea of vayar, in ra'ah, is generally referred to and generally translated, and generally, but it means he saw. But more than that, it also means he understood. It's a deeper thing than just I saw. You know, like we say with listening, it says vayishma, to listen. But vayishma also means to understand. So there are times, that's why Hebrew is a remarkable language in that way. So the idea when you see vayar, don't simply dismiss it as being, he saw. As we'll see, sometimes it's deeper than that. He saw and understood. I think that's true here. And so when it says here, Vayar b'sivlotam, you see how even here in English, it doesn't say he saw their labors, but he witnessed them. That also implies he understood what was happening here. The one says, okay, fine, let's go out. It impacted him, right? And what did he do? Now the specific event, he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew. And what does the Torah again add to that? One of his brethren. Already now we're beginning to sense that Moshe knew these were his brethren. He knew that he was an Israelite. And that's what happened. So he sees that they're beating his brethren. So he turned this way and that. Which means he looked around. What was he looking around for? Well, we see. He saw no one about, so he struck down the Egyptian and hid him, buried him really in the sand. You can't bury people. You can't hide people in sand unless you're going to bury them in the sand. Buried him there. Good. How would you say, why was he looking around here and there? Doesn't want to get caught. He knew this isn't something that would give him a Nobel Prize. You know, it wasn't like it's Obama. He made a speech or something. He actually knew that this was not a positive thing to do. And I think, he was the prince. Even that being true, as I pointed out last time, this concept of him being prince, we have to understand in certain things. Was he really a prince? Did Paro say, Tatala, you're my next guy? No. There was a huge amount of people, of children from the harem and stuff. And if, as we see, this act of Moshe becomes a threat to the power of the Pharaoh, doesn't care who this guy was, he was going to get him. That's why he has to run away. But anyway, that's what happens over here. So, as I pointed out, this repetition of brethren, of Echav, his brothers, is, is very clearly done for a good reason. The Torah wants its future readers to pick up on sometimes little just words, some ideas. And if these repeating, he said, his brothers, it means he recognized them as brethren. And it happens right away after, as it says, he goes out. What does it mean by Yetzeh? He went out. He went out where? What? He was locked in the rooms. He wasn't allowed to go outside. He went out to see his brethren. He went out, in effect, to see the real world of Egypt. Maybe he was in the palace. He saw let them eat cake type of thing. And she had, people don't understand. Marie Antoinette was not a terrible person per se, although I didn't know her personally. I don't know. She never invited me to any of the parties. Anyway, she just understand if you have no bread, so eat cake. She didn't understand that people were that poor. They don't have anything. They don't even have bread, and she just thinks, well, take bread. So this is also when you're in a culture where everything is great, everything is fine, you get what you want, and then you go out to the real world, what's happening. I don't have to go back into ancient history. Come on, look at the royal families we see today. I mean, we mostly identify with what was happening in the British royal family. I would say it's crazy. Then again, it happens in every other family too. But anyway, when you have everything, you don't really connect to the real world. I mean, look at some of these sports heroes who suddenly were struggling in the real world, and and they're giving $100 million, and there's no limit. The only limit you have is I can't think of enough things to buy. You have everything. So the idea of, and I used to say when I first started the rabbinate before, I was wise enough to say, don't say things like this. I used to say, you look around, man. The most difficult thing for people who have, who are eating comfortably, is to hear the word no. To hear the word no. That's why you appreciate the Orthodox world of people who have done very, who have everything they need and are still very careful in their observance of the mitzvah. Because when you have everything and you're never told no, you're brought up in a house where I want this, I want that. Sure, Tatla, here, sweetheart, you can have this, and you suddenly develop this thing. Well, I can have whatever I want, and if I ask something, I'm going to get it. And if my father won't get it, my mother will get it to me. Or if I'll get it, And even if God says no, he says, God, I don't want it. I want to do what I want to do. So to be able to live in a world of success, but nonetheless understand that there is someone who does limit what you should and can do, is a very good step, a very nice, healthy step. At any rate, so there was Moshe. He goes out to the world to see, and what does he see first? As he sees, he looks out. I would think he went out to look to his brethren, and sees that they're being beaten, and so he reacts to that, right? And in spite of the fact that he's brought up in the palace, he sees who his echav are, his brethren are, which means that Bat Paro was wonderful. She didn't tell him, she didn't speak Yiddish to him and tell him you're really Jewish. That's something he took from his home, where he was brought up by his Yocheved. I don't know, and it's not written, and perhaps I'm jumping to conclusions here. The fact that she weaned him, does that mean that she had no more connection to him? I think we touched upon this last time. I wouldn't have been surprised if she came and tutored him also in the palace. Ken Zain, I don't know, it could be. But anyway, his knowledge of the brethren, that he is an Israelite, certainly was planted in him when he was in the house of his mother, of Yochebed, his biological mother. All right, the next story we all know, and that's, of course, in 7b, when you turned over the page. And there you have the story of this confrontation with one Hebrew who is whipping another Hebrew, right? And the names are not given, but they are identified simply as Rasha. There was a wicked one, and there was one who's the victim, one who, yes, I know what Chazal say, Datan and Aviram. Chazal have a great time with that. Anything bad that happened in Midbar was Datan and Aviram. Anything good, but that's why they do it, and for a good reason. Not necessarily that literally it was, although very well could have. That was their type of behavior. But anyway, he was the Rasha, and he was beating another Hebrew, and that's what it says. When he went out the next day, he found two Hebrews fighting. Is this literally the next day? Yeah, it was. I'll tell you why we know that. So he went out again to see more. Maybe he wanted to see, make sure no Egyptians are beating and trying to kill him. Just was beating. He was beating him to death. And he had to stop that. But he went out. And he saw two of them fighting. Two Hebrews now. He said to the Rasha. So they were nice. They said the offender. He wasn't a bad person. He was just an offender. He was just offensive. Yeah. Said to the wicked one, the offender, the one who was attacking, the attacker, why do you strike your fellow? What are you hitting him for? Does it help anything? Yeah. So he retorted, who made you chief and ruler over us? Boy, is that a common... God forbid you try to tell somebody, please don't talk in davening. I'm trying to daven. Well, who are you? You're gone? No. That is unfortunately a not uncommon response to somebody who gets very defensive and knowing that he's wrong. And something like even the shul. You should be talking in shul. Oh, Mr. Holy. There's always some kind of response like that. Fortunately, they don't say that to a rabbi. But behind his back. Anyway, this is really what happens. It's a common thing. Said, oh, big shot. You're going to kill me like he'll kill them? Aha. We say in Hebrew, po kavur hakelev. It's a comment. It means this is exactly the problem here, right here. And that's what it is. When he sees that, Moshe was frightened because he realized, indeed, the matter is now known. Meaning that he thought he looked back and forth, nobody saw what he did. Ha 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 ha, got away with it. And now he finds out, I didn't get away with it. And he knows, because he knew that he didn't want to get caught doing it, and he knew what might happen to him. And as we see, the next psukim say that Paro tried to pursue him and catch him, so he flees to Midyan. If I had the map in front of me, what do I do? So here is Israel, right? Here is the Sinai. There's a desert here. Here's Egypt. Midyan's Midyan's over there. So you have to cross through Sinai to get to Midyan over here. That's what he did. That's how it goes. And fortunately, he had some ways on him. He knew exactly how to get there. Look, people in the ancient world, there were commonly trails that go. The traders would go there, camels, and especially camels through the desert. Not only camels, but the beasts of burden, meaning donkeys and stuff. So he knew the way there, and he makes his way to Midyan. Yeah.
I'm just wondering why it says that Moses was frightened and realized, because it was clear he should have thought that, or he would have thought that the Hebrew who survived the beating he would have gone back to his family and told them, wow, this great guy rescued me, and he would have spread pretty quickly that, wow, there's this Egyptian, because they thought he was an Egyptian.
There are a couple of reasons here. One, he wasn't so sure that the victim was necessarily going to not tell on him if it would be okay. He didn't know if the victim was a good guy, or he could also have not been a nice guy. Two, um, people talk a lot. You know what my son said? He was going to get beaten, and this Moshe guy, he killed it. And then it begins to spread. The Lord spread. He was afraid of that. No davar isn't just, oh, he knew it. If he knew it, there were others who saw it. I thought there was nobody there. But obviously there were others who were there. And therefore, that's what he was afraid. No davar, the matter, my secret has been known. Once you know one, everybody knows it. That was his fear. Yeah. Yeah. Because it says, Vayese bayom hasheni. The second day. Second to what? To the last day. Yesterday. Right. So that's second number two. That's a question. So we see in the episode pitting Jew versus Jew, or Hebrew versus Hebrew. Here too, he doesn't matter who was doing what. It was still one who was an offender and one who was a victim. And he takes on the victim. And he really doesn't even take on the victim. He says, hey, stop. Just stop hitting. Whereas the day before, he had to kill the Egyptian to stop him. Here, he just said, okay, stop. Try to make peace in effect. Right? And the third story, of course, is third episode that we have in C, and that is when Pharaoh learned exactly what I said of the matter, he sought to kill Moshe. Right? So, and that was what Moshe was afraid of when he found out that he was being, it could be, as you said, that maybe he wasn't afraid, right? He was afraid that perhaps something's going to happen. When he heard that the Pharaoh indeed wanted him, now he was not only afraid, now he had to get out of there, and that's what happened. Right? He sought to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Paro. And what did he do? The best way to get rid of the king and the emperor of Egypt is to leave Egypt, which he does. He arrived in the land of Midyan, and he sat down beside a well. He rested there, perhaps. Vayeshev is a fascinating word, and I've mentioned it before. We always say, he sat. That means he lived, he stayed. It could be any of these things. Vayeshev Yaakov, it says Vayeshev Yaakov, doesn't mean he sat there. It means he lived there. He settled there. Okay? And so, does that mean that he settled there? Does it mean that he was just resting for a while? Does it mean that he found a little hut to sit there next to a well, so he had something to, and he planned to just stay there? Either of these explanations are logical and could be true. Anyway, he's by the well, and one day by the well, what does he see? And Before we let you know the story, we have to tell a little background. That's what the Torah does. He said. Now, the priest of Midyan, and as I told you, can be an officer, a high officer, could be both. It could be the head of the religion there, whatever. At any rate, he had 7 daughters. He had another name. It's called Tevye. Anyway, they came to draw water. The daughters did, and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. In other words, they already drawn the water. They filled up the trough, which is a big whole thing, so that the animals could now go and drink from there. Can't drink from a well which is way down, right? But the shepherds came and said, "Why do we have to draw water? You did it for us. Thank you very much." And they drove them off. To chase them away. Now they can water their own flocks. When Moshe saw that, he rose to their defense, and he watered their flock. So, question number 1. Interesting, isn't it? he watered their flock. Remember that story when Rivka watered the flock of the camels? What did Yaakov do? I'm saying when in his time, what did Yaakov do? It has to do with a wall, with a well. He moved the rock, and what did he do right after that? And he watered the flock of Rachel, of Lavan, really, but she was the shepherdess. And so instead of her doing it, he now waters it for her. Well, and do I see a similar thing here? That Rivka did. Because Vayagel, it says that Vayagel, Vayash. No, she doesn't do it. He, Vayashket son. He is the one who I said waters, and it sounds like it's a sprinkler going around in somebody's grass. But it is. I found out after years of me using watering as also the way of giving water to flocks. I was correct. That is a correct thing. So he waters, and he now gives the watering, allows the sheep of Yitro that were being shepherded by the 7 daughters. Now he not only chases away them, he waters the thing for them. So he's in effect, whether he knows it or not, though, in effect, he is doing what Yaakov did. And what did Yaakov do eventually? He marries one of those the shepherdess. What's Moshe going to do now? He's going to marry one of the shepherdesses. Exactly. Huh? One of the 7. Yeah, it was a tough thing, Behind this door, he chooses. It's a fascinating parallel we see here. Okay? And he becomes a future wife. At any rate, so we see this. What do we learn from these things? This is a story of Midianite versus Midianite, is it not? It was the Midianite shepherds who were chasing away the Midianite shepherdesses. And there too, the Torah underscores this story. And in effect, I'm saying, why do you think the Torah, I promise you, in the first 40 years of Moshe's life, more than 3 things happened to him. Why does the Torah indicate these 3 stories? Because again, it's telling you why God is to choose, what kind of personality God sees in Moshe that he wants him to shepherd his flock, shepherd Israel. So here you have it now, where it's not, a goy against a Jew, a Jew against a Jew. No, it's goy against goy. It was not a matter of who it was. It mattered who was right and who was wrong. Who was right? And here again, Moshe sees who's right and who's wrong, to protect the weak, to oppose the evil, like chasing away other people, right? Fight for justice. This is a pretty remarkable. And that's what the Torah is saying. This is the God. You understand now. And if I understand beforehand how nice that he was brought up in the palace, and how nice he learned what it is to be a leader and how one conducts oneself, and to be also educated by mother to sensitize himself, empathy, sympathy, and to find justice. We now see this personality. And
But he was much more passive now. He just, instead of confronting the afflictor, he just watered their flock.
he chased them away. That's how he was able to. Vayagashem, yeah, he chases them away. And then, instead of going back and going to sleep and having the girls go and work, he did it himself. Just like he didn't step back and see the 2 Jews going, Jews are arguing. He stepped up and he says, and doesn't say, please don't. He said, what are you hitting him for? He's very, very positive here, very active. And the first time, he killed someone to save him. The third time, very much. It says Vayigarshum. Where does it say there in Hebrew? And it says right in the beginning, see, right. Vayavo haroim vayigashum. Oh, so the shepherds came and drove the girls off. Vayakam Moshe, Moshe got up, Vayoshi on, and he saved them. How does he save them? But they were taking over the water. The shepherds were saying, "You can't have the waters. We're going to water our flocks." And now he comes over, and he is the one who saves them. How? Vayashket sonam. He said, he takes the water for them. But the others couldn't take the water. He chased them away. Otherwise, there's one guy, Moshe, chased away all the shepherds. Otherwise, what he did? And he sat there, he let them take all the water, then he went over and he watered them. That's not what happened. By Yoshion means he saved them. He saved them from what?
There were two sets of shepherds. There was the girls and the men.
That's right. I said shepherdesses and shepherds. Yeah. Yeah.
But it seems from this text that he just went to get the water, and the men didn't tell him what he did.
I just told that one word that is essential here, Vayoshian, and he saved them. He saved them from what? A bad cold. He saved them from the shepherds who had been taking over the water. That's what it is. And when you think about the fact that there wasn't one shepherd, so he chased them away, however he did it, that's an act of real courage. So it's very active, and he really did these things. And here you have that irrespective of who it is, who's right and who's wrong, he stands there to protect the weak, protect the people, the victims, okay? And this was imparted in him both by by both moms, you know, by Bat Paro and by Yocheved herself. So now we bring what the third part, which I, in effect, gave title to this part of the thing, and that is very nice, great stories, love it. Why did God have Moshe have to go to Midyan? What was the experience in Midyan that's going to somehow make him more proper to be the next redeemer of Israel? That's a really basic question. You know, he hasn't had a real home, doesn't he? He had the home of the palace. How much of a home did he have with his mother? Don't know. Next thing you know, when he grows up, he has to run away. You know, because I'll say he was 40 years old. So it's hard to understand the years. It is true because he was 80 years old when he stood before Paro. So when he says he grew up, and then he learned 2 days of that, and then he has to run away, and they say he ran away when he was 40. So the the timing of the whole thing is an interesting thing to look for, but traditionally and to a certain extent, very logically, yeah, he grew up. Does that mean that when he was 16 he went out, or he grew up, he got to learn more about it, and when he got up and started hanging, and that maybe when he was 20 or 30 is when this happens, and he was able to. Don't know. Either way, not that important. But clearly, there's now time that goes by. I know that because the very next verse tells us that after the story of the Midianites, and it says there that Vayihi bayamim harabim hahen. Many years passed by, and the Pharaoh died. So many years have passed by, and so therefore, now he's going to Midyan. For what purpose? So in the studies I had with the Rav Bazak, he says he sees it as the importance of meeting the daughters, of seeing the women in Midyan, seeing their home, living in that home, because that too will impact him and his personality. And when I started with this whole lecture, shiur, on how women really impacted the very life and personality and greatness of Moshe, that perhaps our rabbis, when they said that because of the righteous women, so it was Israel removed and taken out of and redeemed from Egypt, could that very well have been subconsciously or behind it saying, yeah, the women who impacted Moshe, who indeed took them out of Egypt. And so that's what they wanted. And when you review the events of Midyan, you come to the realization that these women, consciously or not, are really a very important part of this story. Certainly, he marries Tzipporah, which, by the way, that will be next week's lecture about Tzipporah, and we'll spend some time on 3 verses. One verse is worse than the other. Anyway, so we're going to bring that, please God, because we'll finish this, I think, this today. So that'll be next week, and that's very important. So certainly Tzipporah as a wife impacted his life. And she gives him 2 sons that we know of. The eldest son is Gershon, and the other one, Gershom actually, and the other one is Eliezer. Gershom and Eliezer. What those names mean, we will get to probably next week, and that's important too. And why do I say that Tzipporah had a very important, I'll even say she saved Moshe's life. Does anybody know when and where did Tzipporah save Moshe's life? Very good, at the Brit Milah. That's next week's thing. The whole story is very strange. Well, I'll just know how strange it is. And that is certainly a way, you could have died, she saved your life. I guess it sort of impacts your life just a bit. That's what he did. She saved his life. How the brilliance of a fact that a Midianite woman saw the importance of Brit Milah, that's next week also. Very interesting. Okay? And that's how she but it's also true that he, yeah.
Maybe they were doing this.
Well, no. We know that in the ancient world, this isn't the Brit Milah wasn't just the first one to do. Ta-da! We're going to do a Brit Milah. I can imagine the 100-year-old Abram saying, "Are you kidding? What is?" It was a followed by certain. We know that the Gemara says this, and others. We know that beyond the Arabs, of course, who are from Ishmael, there were other nations who did the Brit Milah. Why, what, where, I don't know, but it was an ancient thing. It was a practice that was done. So they knew about it. But at any rate, living in the house of the Kohen Midyan, of a leader, perhaps an officer, a high officer, and maybe even a man of cloth. Doesn't mean he was a tailor. I mean, he was also perhaps a religious, could be, right? We'll call him a faith-based individual. Faith-based. That was very important. I mean, consider the story of the burning bush. It begins by telling us, in number 8, Moshe haya ro'eh et son Yitro, when Moshe was tending the flock of his father-in-law Yitro, and drove the flock into the wilderness and came to Chorev. What was Chorev called? The mountain of God. Mountain of God. What is mountain of God? One could say, well, it will eventually be the mountain of God, because eventually God's going to give that's Har Sinai. God's going to give the Torah there. That sounds very good. But it would seem that there was already in the ancient world a concept that this is a holy mountain. Even then it was called Har Elohim. It was called a mountain of God. Others had thought it also. Why would he, Moshe, when he is tending sheep, end up going to the mountain of God? Perhaps. perhaps his father-in-law, the man of faith, has been teaching him things, whether he told him to do it or told him, there's this holy mountain there, whatever it is that caused him to become more sensitive to the religious concept of a divinity is something interesting to see. And here again, we come to what I started to say before. Look how often you see, and I underline the words in Hebrew, and I did it in English too. Well, good for me. Where it says vayar, 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 va'er, all these things. It says he appeared to him, he gazed, look, saw, all of them the same Hebrew word, and it's all being defined and properly, I would say, as a little different. He gazed at it or he saw it, he looked at it, yeah. And then the passive, he appeared to it. That again, is yes, see. But what did I mention last time? It's not only to see; it is to understand better, to I'm looking for the word to go deeply into it, to absorb what you're seeing. This ain't just thank you very much. Internalize. I have difficulty with any word that's more than one syllable. So thank you. Got three of them here. He not only observed it, he internalized the impact of that. Wait a minute, and he says, here is a bush and it's all aflame. Why is it not being consumed? Right? That's what the Torah says. He said. He understood that there was more in this non-consuming burning bush. And the crucial part of that is God sees that he realizes this. Because God is impressed with Moshe Rabbeinu as it goes on. It says, when Hashem saw that Moshe, had turned aside to look, God called him. It wasn't that he saw, even that he understood, even that he said, oh, it's deep. It says, Kisar Lir'ot. When he saw it, he went over to see. I went over to see what this is. I once had a teacher who said, who knows how many people saw it, passed by, said, well, it's crazy, and walked by. Moshe didn't walk by. Moshe Sar Lir'ot. He went over there because he wanted to see what this was. God says, that's a pretty important guy. That's a guy I want. One who sees not only pain, not only victimizing, things like that. He also sees a divine thing. He senses there's something beyond the natural here. Aha, this is somebody special. How did he learn that? Well, maybe that's exactly what he learned in his father-in-law, the faith guy. Maybe that's why God wanted him in the house of Yitro. That's exactly. And so here we see now that when God saw this future leader, he saw Moshe to be a future leader because he sees, he understands, just like Vayar B'Sivlotam, he saw and understood the suffering of his brethren. He said, this is somebody who can do what I want him to do. And perhaps at this point, I don't know, perhaps we begin to realize how this entire story came to be. Why was Moshe looking for pastures? Because he was shepherding. What was he shepherding? The flocks of whom? Of Yitro, right? Why did he wander so far? I couldn't tell you. Again, map. From Midyan to Har Elokim, which is not so close. Why was he wandering there? Because, perhaps, unconsciously or consciously, as I said, he was attracted to this holy place. Again, how did he know about this place being holy? Because of Yitro. So, for that very reason, Hashem gives Moshe a sign that he would succeed in a mission. I'm skipping the whole part of the argument that Moshe God has with God, and you wonder why. Yeah, gutsy, man. This voice from heaven comes out and a burning bush and says, "You shall go to Israel." And Moshe said, "I really don't want to." I mean, that whole story is unbelievable. But at any rate, God gives him a point. Says, "I'm going to prove to you that you will be successful." And this is the sign I'm giving you. When you take them, the people out, as I tell you, you will, you are going to worship me here at this mountain that you saw and realize is a holy mountain. That's it. The fact that you were drawn to this mountain, you yourself don't know why. How it was, because I heard the midrash that one of the sheep ran away and he ran to get the sheep, and God says, "Oh, look at this! He cares about one lamb." And now I see that. I see it much deeper than that. There was a certain attraction he had to this divine, this very spiritual thing. He just felt that special, and he comes over them one, and it's all perhaps the impact of Yitro himself. And in effect, it says, Moshe, you have now arrived to the point because of what your biological mother had taught you, but because what your stepmother and princess have taught you in the palace's home, and now you have learned who you can be in your Midyan home. That's it. All three, really, how can I put this, became a cocoon for Moshe Rabbeinu in preparing him for this divine mission, a mission that has now flowered to being the man that God wanted. We'll stop here, and Hashem will then start with those three psukim about the story of the Brit Milah. That will be in Mitzvah Hashem next week.